Hi, I am doing a video right now about exactly what happened with Centurylink and the whole horrible story. I'm going to tell my story here. And basically, I require landline and DSL. Being electrosensitive, I cannot use wireless type of phones and internet. No Wi-Fi, none of that. When I'm around Wi-Fi, I get mini strokes, dizziness, and inflammation gets worse, all kinds of horrible symptoms. And so I have to completely avoid Wi-Fi. I can't go to the library and use a library computer. If I go and I be around Wi-Fi, then I'm going to have accidents on the way home. I've been through that. Body work is expensive, and the easiest way to avoid accidents is not go into the Wi-Fi. So I'm also not able to go anywhere really and use a computer because I'm pretty much down in bed half of the time with my conditions. So I need phone and internet to get first my food, just my general basic produce, all the healthy foods I eat. It all comes to me through FedEx, by the phone, ordered by the phone. And most of the foods are ordered on the internet, necessities, everything. You just name everything that you use in your life, and it's kind of, I'm using the internet to get it. And to keep in touch, to talk to other sensitives, to learn, to study. So I have to have those. It's really important. And so I found one place that would be perfect for parking last September. It was between Phoenix and Tucson. It was warm because I need warm weather. And I called Centurylink once I got the address. I called. Before even thinking of looking at the place or even making an appointment to look at it, I called. And I spoke on my first phone call, I spoke to Eric on September 8th of this past year. And he told me it did have phone, and it did have phone. That was the internet and the phone. And it would come out to, $64.95. He said the internet there was very slow. It was 256K, but it's still internet to get by on, and you could even download like a few videos that way. And not to mention my YouTube channel. I wouldn't have a YouTube channel if I didn't have internet either, or be able to watch other channels, which have been so instrumental in getting all the skills to get off the grid. And so I talked to him. He said they did have those services at the address. I gave him the main address because I didn't have the space number, but he said everything at that address is serviced. And so a little while later down the line, some days later, I call and I verify it again before going to look at the place, because I didn't want to look at the place unless I had it verified. And at that point I spoke with Lewis and got his ID number. I wasn't very good about writing down times and ID numbers on a lot of these. I've gotten really good since then. And so then after that I went to see the place and liked it. And the space that I had picked out, it was either 53 or 39. I didn't know which. The landlord had to go check the map and get back to me. So the day after I went to look at the place, I spoke to Kenny, and I asked him about space 39 and space 53 specifically, and if they had service, and he said it was the same 256K I'd been told about before, and it did have service. And then the landlord called me back and told me the space number, that it was space 53. And also, I had someone else call me about a space in Huachuca City, but I didn't know if it had service. It sounded kind of iffy. So on the next phone call to Centurylink, I was going to ask about it, and I kept forgetting. So on the 21st, when the landlord called me with space number 53 as being the space number that I was going to rent, I called and spoke to Wayne at Centurylink, and he told me that yes, there would be service at space 53, everything was fine. And I said, by the way, what about the address in Huachuca City? And I had him check that as well, and he said, well, if you rent that one, there'll be a lot faster internet. It will be 12 megs. And so he verified that there would be internet there. So then later that afternoon, I wrote out a check, filled out the lease, did all the work with the landlord to rent the place. Now, so far, I had spent a lot of money in travel to go all the way from almost Texas in New Mexico that side of New Mexico all the way to this town 8.5 hours away in Arizona and back again. Another 8.5 hours to come back. So it was a lot of gas, a lot of expense, and a lot of time and wear and tear on my health. And so I rented the place and started looking into things, trying to find a propane company. I found one, and then I thought I had them, and then I made a bunch of other calls to find out that, well, they couldn't give me propane, and they didn't know what office could give me propane, so I had to call all over and find another propane company. I had to go through calls and calls, calling like senior centers to try to get helpers for the home, to try to get, you know, just all this. It took from the 21st all the way to the 25th to start getting things going. Hours on the phone. And on the 25th, I decided to call Centurylink back to turn my service on at 5:46 approximately. It was about the time the call ended. So it was before that. I spoke to Rihanna and got her ID number, and she informed me that she couldn't set service up at that address because there was no internet there whatsoever, no DSL. DSL was not available at that address. And I said, well, you know, all the other reps had told me that. I'd rented the place, I paid my money. She said, well, they probably didn't do a line test like they do when you place an order, you have to do a line test. And she said there was nothing there. Well, why would somebody call Centurylink to find out if there's service at a place to want to find out that there isn't? And I told her, I said, this is really, you know, a big concern. It's a situation with a lot of gravity to it. People do homework before, you know, buying $1 million homes. People do homework when they have a home-based business and they need those services. And they're taking out a mortgage that they can barely afford, and then they get this mortgage and find out, well, they can't live in the place. And so then they end up having to walk away from a mortgage, default on that, ruin their credit, and ruin their life. And so it's a big deal to be able to get the information, to do the homework, and to get the right information. And lies don't cut it. They really don't. And so I asked Rihanna about the Huachuca address because I needed to find somewhere. I had wasted all this time, about 3 weeks, on the other address. And so I needed to do something quick because with the landlords wanting me out, I was going to lose my moving help. If I didn't move by the beginning of October, that was my last chance, and then I'd have no one to help me move. So it was really important to move by then because, you know, maybe I could stretch out with the landlords, but they had said no so far. They had said no. And so I asked for more time. They said no. So the Huachuca address, I was told, also did not have internet, and I was lied to about that one as well. So that left me having to scramble for another place to live. And so it left me very little time, and it made it just very awkward, and not being in good health and trying to scramble for a place, it's really, really bad news. And not to mention all the money I spent traveling to Arizona along with time. Now, I looked at several places and also decided that I wasn't even going to drive so much as an hour to look at a place if I didn't have an actual phone order with written confirmation from Centurylink. So every time you put in a phone order, by the way, they ding your credit. But I figured it was worth 5 points off my credit to look at these places to know that I'm going to have service. I mean, I rented that one place and put my money down. That's money lost. And had I moved my trailer, it would have even been worse. The one place that I did rent, the guy was really nice and gave me my money back. And so I started branching out to New Mexico, even though I really don't want to stay in New Mexico, just because time was of the essence and I needed to get moved. And if I got moved into my trailer, then it's a lot easier to move later. You just have someone tow you. So with your stuff in it, I wouldn't need the same moving help or people to, you know, set stuff up. So I checked other places. They had bad EMFs. They weren't going to work out. And so as a last resort, I found a place in New Mexico. It was like central southern New Mexico. And it really wasn't, like, it's not really a safe, good place to live. they're okay as far as, you know, crime and things, but the authorities, they do a lot of crooked things, and you could disappear off the street. But I figured, you know, since I'm mostly homebound, I'm going to stay home anyway, and I'll just have a lot of stuff sent in through mail. So before I looked at that place, I called Centurylink and spoke to Julia on October 2nd. And the park had told me that the spaces that would be good for me would be anywhere between 51 and 59. So the first thing I asked her is, I said, can you do a line loop test on those spaces from 51 to 59? So she did them on each space. So she said, and they came back good, that there would be 12 megs of internet. So then I asked her to set up an order, and she said, well, you need a space number for that. I said, well, just use space 51 if you have to, and I'll call and I'll, you know, change it later. And so I actually set up an order with her before even going to look at the place, and got a confirmation. I want to show you the Centurylink confirmation. This was the email I got from them. You see at the top, you see order confirmation number there at the top up there. And then you see what I ordered. Home phone with long distance and high-speed internet. It was a package. And below there's the address, but it shows the account that I had set up, and my services would be activated and when on October 9th. And when I made the appointment with Julia, the tech was supposed to come out from 1 to 4. That's the appointment that we made. And so basically that's the written order confirmation that I had before I went to look at the place. So since I had that confirmation, I felt pretty comfortable, and I went and I rented the place. And they charged me first month's rent, and then they also had a situation where there's certain months where they have events, and then they charge you for the event. So I had to pay like $65 for the event. And then you also had to be a member to stay there. So that was another $45. So I had to pay all that, and the rent is not refundable. And so I did have to pay all that. And then afterward, I had a question about the modem. After I rented the place a day later, I called Randolph in tech support and asked him my question about the modem. And I also asked him to do another line test and re-verify that, you know, the speed on the line, to test that. And when I placed the order, I also arranged that I was going to use my own modem, and that's what I wanted to ask him the question about. And I wouldn't be taking one of their modems. So in all this time, you know, I had different questions about, you know, setting my account up. And also, after I rented the place, I had the space number, which was 51. And so I made all these calls to try to find out about changing the space number. I talked to this person, and then she had me call a different department, and I talked to this person about it, and he went and talked to tech support and checked the whole address. It was like putting in a new order, except I would keep my same technician time, and had it changed so the space number was definitely on the bill, changed my billing address to that with the space number, and all that. And then I get a confirmation in the mail about how they sent me a modem, and I didn't order a modem. So then I called back on the 8th to talk to him about that, and the person that I spoke with at first, he was so rude that I ended up going for a supervisor immediately before I even got the phone call started. And when I got the supervisor, he checked the address, he checked all the information, and he said, well, the address that you gave us isn't listed in the 911. You're going to need to do some things if you're going to get service. And he told me that I would have to have the owner go to the deed and get the section, township, and range, and all that information, and all this stuff off the paperwork. And the owner of that park is not even on the premises. The owner, supposedly, you can't even get in touch with them, and the manager is hard to get in touch with because they're not on the premises. And then the person below them is on the premises some of the time, so it's just really hard. And I told them, I said it would be really, really hard, but they said that I would have to have that to give to the tech, and then when I give it to the tech would turn my service on. And so I hung up with him. I didn't even get to ask him about the modem. And so I called back again and re-verified it with, you know, the next person that it was going to be okay. And they checked into my order, and they said, well, they could just, you know, return the modem and send me a return label. So that person issued me a return label for the modem so that when I got it, it could get returned. And then the day before the installation, on the 8th, I called and talked to a couple different people because I was concerned about my username and password being able to keep the same one over there, so that after it got installed over there, I wouldn't have to spend 3 hours on the phone setting my modem back up over here. It was just going to be a big problem, so I tried to arrange to do that, and then I got tech support again, and they checked the whole order and checked everything and all that, and they told me that I needed to call back again the next day, the following morning, the morning of my installation. Now, I originally had an appointment of 1 to 4 for the installation, and I also told them that I was going to have to leave at 11 o'clock to be the other town by you know, 1 o'clock, and that I would not be home after 11, that I absolutely had to leave after that. And so any attempt to reach me would have to be made before that. And so that morning I call up on the 9th and I speak to Nikki. And Nikki told me, she said, well, there's no appointment. You don't have an appointment today. I said, what do you mean? My service is supposed to come on. I made an appointment from 1 to 4. And she said, well, we're going to turn it on from the office. Now, when I spoke to Julie, I explained that there were space numbers, that I'd be moving a trailer in, and that's why she set up the tech to, you know, put the, you know, run the line from the box to the trailer, which they have to do when you have, you know, like an RV kind of situation or a mobile home kind of thing, and you're moving something in, they have to set that up. So she set up a new appointment for someone from 1 to 5. And so I left at 11, went over there, and I was there from 12:30 all the way, and then 4 o'clock came along. And they do have an emergency cell, but it makes me sick to use it. So I made a quick call. I spoke to Rachel. She guaranteed me that, you know, she put me on hold real quick and guaranteed me that the tech was on his way and that he would be there by 5. So 5 o'clock came and went, and at 5:19 I called and I spoke to a representative there at Centurylink. I was using my cell phone on a speaker across the room, shouting at the top of my lungs so that I could have the phone conversation, and it was very, very hard on me. Afterward, I was already feeling my head tingling and dizzy and all that, and starting to have problems talking. And the person that I spoke with at Centurylink was bent on selling me Verizon. He just wouldn't take no for an answer, and I told him, I said, I'm getting sick from using the cell phone. I can't tolerate wireless. It gives me strokes, dizziness, and other problems. I won't be able to drive home. We have to make this quick and make sure that my account can get set up and we can get a tech out here. And he said, well, first I want to tell you about another Verizon plan. And he just would not stop. He wouldn't stop. And I told him, I can't waste my phone time with this. And then he tries to sell me another wireless plan. And I told him, what part of not being able to be around wireless and wireless making me sick don't you understand? And he finally got the picture and started to check into my account. Then he put me on hold. He says, I'm going to talk to the technical department. I'm going to, you know, talk to them. And he left me on hold for an hour before coming back to tell me that the tech did come. Now I can see the driveway to the park from my trailer. I didn't see a tech come the whole time. I didn't see it. I could see it out the window. And way down the road, I could see this driveway. I didn't see a Centurylink van pull in. But he told me that the tech could not gain access to the box to hook up the wires and install the service, so that I was going to have to, you know, arrange with that, with the management for that. And how about tomorrow morning? I said, there's no way by tomorrow morning I can talk to the management. How about tomorrow afternoon? And so he arranged it for Saturday afternoon for the tech to come out, and then I would talk to the, park management that morning to make sure there was access to the box. And I went to the office like right after that and tried to talk to somebody, but they'd already left. And so I drove home, and it was really like a drive home from hell, because I didn't realize really how dizzy I was. But, suddenly I'd be on the highway and I'd be holding the brake pedal in and realize that the cars were going by me at 70 miles an hour, and I was on the highway that there wasn't a light. And so, I was so dizzy, I don't know how I made it home in one piece. I had nobody to call to take me home. I had no other way. All my medicines, everything I need, my bed, everything is at home. So I had to go home, and fortunately I made it home okay. And that night at 2 in the morning, I finally got around to checking the answering machine. By that time I was dizzy. I had a horrible headache. I had a headache for days afterward. I didn't even know how I was going to go there Saturday. My arm was red. Even though I wasn't holding the phone, my arm was red, and it stayed red for a couple of days with little red bumps. And I listened to my machine at 2 in the morning, and there was a message sent close to noon. The technician himself had left that message, the one that was supposed to be there, and he said, "Oh, there's no service there whatsoever. That address can't be served because there is no service there." And I was just shocked. I was, completely shocked, because supposedly they had done a line test to see, and all this to see. And on the 7th, I did the order on the 2nd of October, called and spoke to this person. I spoke to 4 different people before the 7th. And I had my trailer towed there. It cost hundreds and hundreds upon hundreds to tow it from Tucson all the way, almost, we're talking an hour and 45 minutes from Texas. And that is what it took to, I'm not even that far from Texas, actually, but that's what it took, hundreds of dollars to tow the trailer there, and then money to pay to have the trailer set up and leveled and everything hooked up. And then you've got to consider that there's going to be money to tow it out of there now, because I'm going to have to, I was left with, if I can't have phone service, I'd have to tow it to storage. And I just cried all night and finally went to sleep. And when I woke up that morning, I did do what I said I was going to do. I called the park and I asked them to set up, to arrange that, when the guy comes to set up service, that he would be able to get access to the box, to get a key. And they said that they had spoken to the tech that did come by, and there is no wires to anything. There's no service. There's no possible way to get service. And they told me that, and they told me the tech had said that, and so it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to have anything, and I decided not to even show up for that final appointment because it was obvious. And I actually spoke to the tech on the phone. I spoke to him. I've got call records here of, this is the message that he left. And then on the 10th that day, I spoke to him at about 4:15 and 4:30, and I think 12:45 too. It says here 10:10, 12:45. I spoke to him because I had a number that I could call him back at because his number showed up on my caller ID. So he told me that actually I called him. It was 12:45. I remember now. I called him. And from what showed up on my caller ID, and he said, well, write my number down again just so you have it. But he ended up calling me back because he was going to try to go recheck the property, and his supervisor wouldn't allow it. And then I guess he eventually did go recheck it later on or another day. See, it says here supervisor would not allow. And this is more calls to Centurylink, and that was that night before. And then I was told, I talked to somebody again on the 9th, and that was another call. So these are all calls having to do with the service. Needless to say, bottom line is I could not get service there. And so it kind of left me in a real lurch. Now I had nowhere to go. I'm now currently in my flooded apartment trying to hold over and stay here and hope that they don't service me notice, and try to just stay as long as I can and try to do something. And after that, I immediately started looking in areas that weren't serviced by Centurylink. Listen, the third time is a charm. There's no way that I'm going to make a mistake again and get a different result. I'm not even going to try it. There's no way. Anything serviced by Centurylink probably is not going to have service. They're probably going to have some reason that they can't hook it up. They're just irresponsible as a company. They're just not probably going to do it. Whether I have an order before I go look at the place or not, it's just not worth it. And that leaves me, I really need a warmer climate, but that leaves me with northern Arizona for frontier service area. That leaves me with Windstream in New Mexico. It doesn't leave me very good areas. Those areas where Windstream services in New Mexico, they're brutally cold. You know, I'd probably be better off going to like upstate New York and getting frontier there and have a warmer place most of the time than to be at, you know, 5 degrees all the time. It's just not worth it. And so you can't do that living in a trailer. It won't work, no matter how good your heater is, or heaters in my case are. It's not going to be enough. And all that, you know, off-grid propane heat won't do the job. So the latest thing is I'm still staying here, and after all this ended, that's when the flood happened here. A lot of bad stuff happened here. It continued to happen because the more I stayed, the more bad things happened here. And I just don't have the confidence. I ended up just finally so worn out and sick, I was in bed for a while. And I kind of, while I was in bed, I, you know, saw a special, another channel here on YouTube, Technomadia. They did a special on mobile internet, and I'm like, huh, why would I want that? You know, I'm electrosensitive. I can't even be around that stuff, but I watched it because I was so sick in bed. I didn't even care what was on. It was just like voices, and while it was playing, something caught me, and they were talking about things that gave me ideas, and then I just kind of turned it off. And I was looking at something else, another electrosensitive site, and I found a thing about a phone where a guy had used a home phone connect and put it 150 yards from his house and ran cable and had phone service in a place where there was none. And it got me thinking, like, well, the mobile internet thing, and they had those MiFis, and so I started looking into that more and more. And so that's kind of my goal, is to work on that, so I can still live in a warm climate. And it would even give me mobility. Like right now, traveling and moving around is just so hard, but, you know, back shortly after I applied for disability and shortly after I got it, it was easier for me to get around than it is now. So, you know, in the future, if it becomes a little bit easier, I could actually go by a beach for 3 months or something and stay and then go back to Arizona. So, I mean, it would just give me a lot more leeway on where I could live, and also confidence that when I move to where I live, the only thing that I have to do is to find out if there's phone and internet there, is to take the Verizon MiFi, because the Home Phone Connect is also a Verizon-run device. Even if you get like a different brand of it, it's still using those lines. So I could take the MiFi and see if it turns on real quick. And if it turns on real quick, I know I've got service there. Plus, looking at the service map, that you do want to try it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. It's almost like never again with Centurylink. And since I kind of started looking into that, I interviewed a helper who had moved in here into a house, and she spent several $1,000s because the people before had taken the phone lines out, and she spent several $1,000s to put phone lines back in a house she was renting. And it was really all the money she had. And then Centurylink said, I'm sorry, we can't service your house. And it was just horrible. And I was kind of warning some other people who just moved into a neighborhood, an HOA, and I said, I noticed you're still using your cell phone, but you had to give me a new number, and then I noticed it was your cell phone, and you've been living here. What happened? And we're having problems getting phone. I was like, oh, no, it's going to be this again. You know, and I warned them. I said, you better hold on to my channel and see what I do and figure out, because you're probably going to need to do the same thing. Because basically, Centurylink is not providing people service. They're getting a monopoly. Because one phone company can cover an area, like AT&T can cover an area, and then another area might be Frontier, And they bid to be able to cover that area. And so Centurylink covers more areas than any other company, and they bid to cover this. And so Centurylink is covering like southern Arizona and southern New Mexico, and they're supposed to provide service there. You know, if they're not gonna, they should let like Frontier or another company come in and buy the lines and do it. Like maybe even Bell South or anybody come in and buy the lines, but they don't. They just hold on to it, and then they just, you know, as the people quit the service, they don't start up new services. The lines break, they don't repair them. I actually had a problem here with that where my line broke, and the only way I was able to continue getting phone was to get Comcast, and I ended up getting hit in the back in the process because I went and I tried to use a phone and the neighbor hit me in the back. And believe me, I felt that for the next 6 months. And so that was a long time ago, before I knew I was electrosensitive, and as soon as I was well enough to get out of bed again after that back incident, some people picked me up and dropped me at the Verizon store so that would never happen to me again. And so I've always had an emergency cell phone, even though I'm sensitive, just in case something like that happens. I mean, it could save my life in a situation instead of hurt me. It could be a benefit to me in these little situations where I use it once for one thing. So that's the story. That's the Centurylink story. I went to the Arizona Public PUC, and they said that they can't really handle it, and they had me file fraud charges with the Attorney General. So I've done that because they really do need that brought against them. The last CEO did like some insider trading and stuff, and this kind of thing happened every single day with Centurylink. He got several calls a day back when it was Quest, when that CEO was in charge. And then it got better, and now it's kind of going the other way again. And one thing I've noticed is a couple of people I spoke with at Centurylink were kind of apologetic, but like Rihanna, she wasn't concerned about the fact that she couldn't set service up for me in Arizona. She was not concerned one bit, and it didn't bother her. I asked for a supervisor. She acted like I was crazy for wanting a supervisor. But it's a serious situation when people can't be given honest information before making a purchase or a rental. You know, it's very important. And I must have asked her, every time I asked her for a supervisor, she said no. She kept shooting me down. And it just got to the point where I was not going to get her to transfer me to a supervisor. And afterward, these people absolutely had no remorse, no consciousness for what they did and what it cost me. And I had to pay $60 to have my trailer towed from the space it was in to storage across the park. It's stored in the same park now. And I'm going to have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get it back into Arizona. I never would have brought it here to begin with if I didn't think I'd have phone service here. So it's going to be hundreds of dollars to do that. And it's just a horrible, horrible expense. I went to the PUC here in New Mexico, and they told me they can't do anything about it. You know, Centurylink says that, you know, I knew that there was no service there before I called them. Well, then why did I call them? Why did I set up an order? Why did I do it? Doesn't, their excuses did not make any sense. And the Utilities Commission here really doesn't want to bother with doing anything. They're not going to be held accountable. It's New Mexico. They never hold anybody accountable for anything here. I mean, I've had all kinds of consumer things happen, and